are going to focus on cause and solution essays, right? So this again is another type of essay. Right, so let's have a look at this specific type. Now remember, even if you do general, even if you do academic essays, still this will be common for both categories, right? Now here, the way that these essays are worded can vary, but generally you will be asked to write about both the problem and the cause, and sometimes even the solution, right? Sometimes you would be only asked to write about the solution. So it depends on the question. Sometimes they can ask you the problem and solution. Sometimes they can ask you what causes this and what are the solutions. Sometimes they can just ask you for the solution only. So 3 types of questions that could come under cause and solution essays, right? So here what you should be doing is identify the common synonym words and phrases used in the problem solution questions. Here are some of the key words and their synonyms used. Now for problem they could use issue, resulting or situation. For cause they could use the reasons or why would this happen. If they want the solution, they could ask you straight away what is the solution, or they could ask you how would they deal with this, how would they solve this, how would they prevent this, how would they tackle the situation. So these are the different words that could be used to bring out solution, okay. So you have problem, you have cause, and you have solution. Right? They might most of the time use these words, but if they don't, then these are probably some of the words that they would use to bring out the same meaning. Alright? So, what are the common mistakes that students usually do? Now, confusing the problem and the causes questions, right? So, you should clearly identify what type of question is it. What are they asking me? Are they asking me for the problem or are they asking me for the causes, right? Problem is what is the main situation. Causes are what actually makes that specific problem, okay? And then most students have too many ideas. If you go to put too many ideas, your reader is going to get confused and you will also get confused when you're writing your answer. So don't clutter too many ideas, okay? Not developing on your ideas. Now this happens when you don't draw up your mind map, okay? Or when you don't draw an outline for your answer. It's very important that you plan your answer ahead, look at your plan and then develop your answer. Because if you keep on looking at your plan, then you will start developing on those ideas and you will develop your ideas then. If you don't plan, then this will happen, right? Not developing both sides of the argument equally. So that depends on your question. Sometimes when they ask you for the problem and solution, sometimes you forget to write the solutions. You only write the problems, right? So you need to make sure you answer both parts if they ask you for both, right? Not linking the problems and solutions. So that's another common thing. Some students write some problems and then the solutions are not for those problems. They are just random solutions, right? You can't do that. When they ask you for problems and solutions, they need to interlink. So if you talk about a problem 1, then the solution 1 should be for that problem 1. Problem 2 and solution 2 should be for that specific problem. So they should link together, right? And not being specific enough. Sometimes students tend to be too vague in their ideas. So if you're vague, right, then that becomes a problem when you're trying to talk about specific solutions, okay? So when you're especially talking about solutions, you need to be specific and you need to make sure that they address and link with the problems. Alright? So, let's have a look at the essay structure. Now, when we were having a look at the essay structure, you got to know that there were three main parts: introduction, body and solution, right? But here we are going to look at it more in detail, especially for this specific type of essay, where you would be writing the problems, the causes or the solutions or a mix of these. So in the introduction, you first paraphrase the question, okay, and then you have your outline sentence. In the sense, you would write the key problems and the causes related, you answer the question. So in other words, in our language, this is the what part, okay. If they ask you at any point an opinion, you could put it. Very rarely do they do that, but if they do, you could put your idea there as well. So what do you think? Okay, would this help in the future? What is your opinion about it? They could ask you. If so, you could put your opinion, right? If not, paraphrase the question and then answer the question what. What are you going to answer in that specific essay? Then you have body para 1 or your supporting paragraph 1, where you have the topic sentence, explain an example, okay. So here you state a problem, or if they ask you for a cause, you state the cause there. Then you explain the problem or the cause and then you give an example. So you repeat the same thing, right, if they want another cause, but if not, if it's like a cause and solution or problem solution style, then paragraph 2, you state a solution. And then you explain the solution and you give an example. Now this solution is the solution for this specific cause or problem, okay. Now you could have a body para 3 which is optional, right. Look at the one with the asterisk. If you have more than one cause and have a solution linked for each problem or each cause, you could make each body paragraph including a problem and a solution, okay. So you don't necessarily have to have the problem and solution in two separate paras. If you have more than one, problem 1, solution 1, body para 1, problem 2, solution 2, body para 2. You could do that structure as well, okay. So either way, make sure that the clear progression is there, the logical structure is there, and you link these ideas together clearly, okay. Show the reader that you understand the topic, you understand what the examiner is asking from you, and you can then categorize the data as you want, or categorize the information rather as you want into the paragraphs, right. Finally, you write the conclusion where you summarize the key points, alright. I thought let's do an example together like we always do, so that from there onwards we could have a look at a sample answer and then start discussing a few sample answers, right? So let me write an example for you. Many offenders commit more crimes after serving their first punishment. Why is this happening? And what measures can be taken to tackle this problem. Right, so let us have a look at this question. Many offenders commit more crimes after serving their first punishment. So, more crimes. Why is this happening? So, the problem is, now you need to identify the parts of this question. So, the problem is that people start to commit more crimes than before after their first punishment. Why is this happening? So, what are the causes behind this? Why is this happening? Okay, you need to answer that. And what measures can be taken to tackle this problem? So, in other words, here they are asking you for the solutions. So, that is the second part. So, this is cause and solution. They are asking you what causes this problem and what are the solutions that can be taken to prevent this situation. What is the situation? What is the problem? Where more and more people, where more crime is happening when they come out of their first punishment. Alright? So, draw a little mind map first. Okay. So, what are the causes? Right? Now, I would say cause number one is because we don't provide them enough useful skills, right? So, they don't really learn anything in terms of rehabilitation, okay? So, that could be one problem. One cause. And another cause as to why this would happen is because maybe they find it difficult to find employment opportunities. Because people would say, oh, you've done this offense, so we don't want to take you. So, these could be some of the causes. Now, in terms of solutions, right, I think that when they go into prison, right, they should have a good rehabilitation program. Where they teach useful skills. So when they come out, maybe they can start their own business. You teach them some good skills, good practices that they could use when they're back in the society. The other one is to have a system where they could track and monitor how they set up or how they get back into society and how they could find employment, okay? So maybe track, or we could say monitor employment opportunities. This might be something hard to do because monitoring them always might not be possible, okay? So, it's not easy to monitor these people because they'll be all over in a specific country, right? But it would be good to implement some system so that it's easy for them to monitor and make sure that they get back into employment without people pushing them back out of employment, okay? So, either have a specific set of employers who could recruit them. So, thinking about those specific options, right? So, this is just my ideas. However, I know you could have so many other ideas, and if you do, please feel free to write your causes and the solutions, right? So, for this specific cause, this is the solution, and for this cause, this is the solution, okay? Now, let me start writing the essay based on these ideas, so that we could have a look at it and the vocab and how we have structured it, okay? Let me just get back my blue pen, right, and off we go with the essay. A large number of criminals who to serve their first prison sentence leave prison only to re-offend. This is mainly because of the lack of rehabilitation and difficulty finding regular employment once released. There are a number of solutions which should be implemented to deal with criminals who reoffend. Firstly, the reason for most first-time offenders committing crimes again once they have been released from prison is due to the lack of rehabilitation while in prison. In other words, offenders are not given a chance to retrain and learn new skills for their future or develop a deeper understanding of correct moral behavior. And instead mix with other criminals which only strengthens their criminal intentions. Secondly, repeat offending is also owing to the difficulty in finding employment after being released. As a result, many of them struggle financially, which leads them back to crime regardless of the consequences. So let us have a look at what is here on the board. Now here we have the introduction, okay, where the question has been paraphrased. A large number of criminals who serve their first prison sentence, okay, leave the prison to kind of re-offend. So this is your paraphrased question. So this is you answering the question. So this bit is kind of what is the answer, what will your structure be like. So you're not saying this essay will discuss, but in other words you're saying, okay, this is the answer to the question. This is mainly because of the lack of rehabilitation. Number 1 point, cause 1, difficulty finding regular employment, cause 2. And then we say, okay, there are different solutions that could be implemented. So we're not really saying the solutions because they're going to deal with these causes. So first one is lack of rehabilitation. So that's what we are going to have a look at first. Okay. So here firstly, the reason for this is that what? Due to the lack of rehabilitation. So this is point 1, topic sentence, very, very clear, okay? And then start to explain more about it, okay? How their behavior is not being, changed, and we kind of mix them with the other criminals, so it only strengthens their criminal mindset or the intentions. So therefore that is one reason. And then we say secondly, what is it? It's the problem in finding employment. Okay, so because of that, financially they are stressed, okay, they're not stable, and therefore that leads them back to doing another crime without thinking about the consequences. So we've spoken about the causes. Now we're going to talk about the solutions. All right. So here you can see how I have structured it step by step. Intro, body 1 is talking about the problems, the causes, cause 1, cause 2. Now body para 2 is going to talk about solution 1 and solution 2 for cause 1 and cause 2. Okay, right. There are two effective solutions to the problem of repeat offenders. One way to tackle this is to ensure that all criminals entering prison are given the chance to retrain with useful skills which will hopefully ensure them a job after they have served their sentence. By doing this, it will help them reintegrate back into society and give them some means of supporting themselves financially. Another method of dealing with criminals who reoffend is to have more supervision and checks in place when they are back in society. This solution would hopefully prevent them from taking any chances and deter them from reoffending because they are being so closely watched. In conclusion, having training in prison and also close observation when first time offenders are released are effective in dealing with the issue. If governments implement these solutions, in future, crime figures would soon drop. Right, so let's have a look at our answer here. Now we have spoken about the causes. Now what are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about the solutions. So here I'm saying there are two effective solutions. Okay, so there are two ways to tackle this. One way is to ensure that they are being given a set of useful skills during their rehabilitation program, so that will help them to build up something on their own and financially they will be secure. Another method, then we know that is the second one, is to have more supervision and checks to monitor them when they are back in society. So this would help them to stay away from trouble. So in conclusion, which I'm showing the reader that this is the last para, we should train them while they are in prison and then make sure that we closely observe them when they are released. Okay? And if that is in future, you can see future, if the government implement these solutions, then in future the crime figures would soon drop. Okay? So it is important that you understand this structure. What is the structure? You have the introduction, you have cause 1 and 2. For that, you have solution 1 and 2 in the next body para, and then finally you have the conclusion. So I'd like you to really sit down, pause the video para by para and read through carefully, understand the structure, look at the cohesive devices, how have the sentences been constructed, and what are the words used here. So these are the words that we have come across with crime, right? And if you were at a beginner level, you would have learned some of the words because we did a lesson on crime, and then as you progressed, hopefully you've got more words, and that is when and why this was a useful topic at your beginner level. So you can see how it feeds into your advanced level pillar when it comes to writing, okay? Right, so let us have a look at practice question 1. One problem faced by almost every large city is traffic congestion, okay? What do you think are the causes and what solutions can be taken, okay? Right, so first we have to write the causes. So what are the causes for traffic congestion, and then what are the solutions? So before you start writing, plan your answer. What are the causes? What are the solutions? I'll give you about 2 to 5 minutes to plan your answer. Off you go. Alright, so hopefully you have jotted down some ideas. Now let me write a few ideas for you as well, right? Now one cause could be the increased number in private vehicles. Okay. So what could you do for that? You could have like a odd even policy for chaotic cities. Okay, so the odd numbers enter on these days and the even car number plates enter on these days. So eventually you will see a drop in the number of vehicles. Actually, at least 50% of it will drop. Okay, so because the private number vehicles have increased, there's a lot of congestion, right? And what you could do is introduce an odd and even car number policy, the number plate, depending on that. If it's an odd number, you go on these days. If it's an even number, you go on these days, right? Another cause could be the public transport not being that comfortable. Okay, so public transport. Let me just get the spellings right there. Might not be that good. Unhappy faces. Not that good. So what can you do actually? What are the solutions? Improve public transportation. Improve the facilities, improve the frequency of the number of public transport buses and trains going from one destination to another. You could subsidize the public sector again. So think about different ways to improve the public transport. All right. So in this one, I'd like to show you a different structure. Now in that one I wrote the causes and then the solutions. In this one I'm going to write cause 1, solution 1. In the next para, cause 2, solution 2. Okay, so that you can see both ways how an answer can be structured. Okay, so I'm going to start with the introduction, and then I'll move into body 1, body 2, and then finally the conclusion. Traffic jam is a major challenge faced by almost the big towns and cities. An increase in the number, without saying number, we'll say increase in the volume of private vehicles and insufficient utilization of public transport facilities are the causes of this problem. While outlining the above, this essay will also discuss the solutions, right? Now, body para 1. One of the prime reasons of traffic congestion in big towns is the increasing number of private automobiles on the road. This is a problem as the count of vehicles increase on the road and leads to long queues and halts. For instance, in 2014, one of the biggest traffic congestions was reported in China's capital city, Hong Kong, which lasted for more than 24 hours. To solve this issue an odd even policy can be introduced in chaotic means really busy cities in which either the even or odd digit license plate would be allowed on the roads on a particular day. As a result, there would be a straight drop in the number of automobiles on the roads by 50%. Next one. Another major cause of traffic congestion in large cities is the inefficient use of the government transportation system. This is because trains and buses are not always reliable and also frequent services are not available in many areas. This can be resolved if authorities can ensure a comfortable and reliable ride and subsidize public transport. As a result, people would champion the use of government buses and this would eventually decline the volume of traffic on roads. In conclusion, traffic congestion is a massive concern in big cities which can only be eliminated by introducing innovative regulations and improving the public transport system. Right, so let us have a look at our long answer. What have we got here, right? Now here I started with the introduction, okay? So what did I do here? Paraphrase the question. Traffic jam is a major challenge faced by almost all the big towns and cities, okay? So this one is more like the paraphrased question. An increase in the volume of private vehicles and insufficient utilization of public transport facilities are the causes. So I've got two causes. One, increase in private vehicles, insufficient utilization of public transport. So that's what I spoke about in my mind map, if you can remember, okay? And then I say while outlining the above, this essay will also discuss the solutions, right? So then I start off by saying one of the prime reasons for traffic congestion is what? One is the increasing number of private automobiles, right? So I talk about how it could be a problem, and for an example, right, which is another word for instance, the biggest traffic jam that was there was in China, and it was in the city of Hong Kong, which lasted for 24 hours, right? To solve this, so this is the solution, we could have an odd and even policy. So depending on your number plate, okay, if you've got an odd or even digit number plate, on odd days you go on these specific days, and if you've got an even digit number plate you go on these specific days, right? So that is cause 1, solution 1. Then I move on into the second one, which I say another major cause for that is that the government transportation system is not being developed. I think that's quite true in Sri Lanka as well, right? So they're not always reliable and they're not comfortable. They are heavily crowded, right? And it's not always available as well in most parts, right? So this could be solved, right? If the authorities, so a solution is that the authorities need to ensure comfortable and reliable ride, okay, and subsidize the public transport. If so, that would be better, okay. Finally, I say in conclusion, the traffic congestion is a massive concern for everyone and it could be eliminated by coming up with innovative strategies and improving the public transportation, okay. So we've kind of given a summary of what we have written. So here I've got a complete answer for you again because it was practice question 1 and I'd like you to pause the video and go through the structure. So when I did the example, I did cause, okay, cause 1, cause 2 and I did solution 1, solution 2 in 2 separate paras. In this answer what I did is I did cause 1, solution 1 in one paragraph, cause 2, solution 2 in another paragraph, okay. Right, so with that we move on into the next question. The natural resources such as oil and fresh water are being consumed at an alarming rate. What problems does it cause? Okay, so what are the problems that this cause and how can we solve these problems, right? So now, what is the situation here? Lots of people use the natural resources and we use it at an alarming rate, which is just shocking, okay. So we use so much of oil, we use it to generate electricity, we use it for all the vehicles, right? And then fresh water we use again to develop electricity, okay, and then again fresh water for all the other things like cooking, washing, cleaning, all of that, okay. So what problems does this cause? If you keep on using all your natural resources at this rate without actually having, you know, save it at least without using it unnecessarily, right? What could be the problems for that, okay? So actually what problems would that cause in the future? And then how can we solve this? So I'd like you to take a few minutes and think about the problems. Okay, and how can we solve these, so the solutions? Take a few minutes, pause the video here and jot down your answers. Off you go. Right, so hopefully you've written some answers. Now let's see. Now, well, using oil and fresh water and these kind of natural resources, one problem could be that you use excess oil and all of that, okay. A problem is, it's a problem for industrialization and all of these cars, traveling via cars and industrialization, okay. So when you have all the industries relying on oil and when you have all the cars relying on oil only, that could be a problem. So solutions could be where you could encourage e-cars, electricity cars, okay, where you use them through alternative energy sources like either wind, okay, or solar. So you charge it and then you have solar power and then from that you kind of charge the vehicles and you start using your equipment in organizations and companies or plants, okay. Could be one way, okay. So let's just not talk about industrialization. Let's talk about the cars not being able to travel because it might be too much in one point, okay. So let's talk about cars not being able to be used. So you can introduce e-cars or electric cars, okay. The second one is having no water, okay. So the problems will be, we'll not have livelihood. We can't have, you know, the animals will die, okay, and we'll not have any kind of animals or insects or human beings. So the solution is encourage people to use carefully. Okay, you need to make sure they don't waste water, okay, and always make sure that from a very young age they're aware about these resources and they use it only when they want to. So showing that importance and understanding when and where to use it would be really, really good. Okay, so here are some of the problems and solutions. You can have different ways and that's totally up to you. That's fine. Okay, so you can start writing your essay with that. Now I'm not going to write this because I've done two with you and I'd like you to start doing your essays on your own so that that's when you really start to pick up on the words, the vocab and your grammar. Okay, so as I always tell you, the best way to do it is you need to get your answers assessed and that's very, very important. Okay, so question number 3. Environmental problems such as pollution and climatic variations are increasing nowadays. The governments have taken some measures at a global level, but they got only few solutions. Why is it so? Okay, why do you think this is the case? And how can this problem be solved? Again, think about why, what are the reasons, and how can the problem be solved? Okay. Question number 4. An increasing number of professionals such as doctors and teachers are leaving their own poorer countries to work in developed countries. What problems does this cause? And what can be done to deal with this situation? So in terms of problems, the main problem is that it creates brain drain, okay? So you start losing a lot of professionals from your country, so there is a heavy brain drain, okay? So what can you do actually? You need to encourage them to stay in the country. So you need to make sure that you use them properly or you pay them well enough for them to settle here. Okay, so that's what I think. The main problem is brain drain, okay? And I think that we should pay them adequately, give the necessary, the facilities for them to do their job, and then that would help the countries to develop as well in the long run. Okay, so that's just what I think, but they're asking you for problems, so you need to think about one more, right, and a solution for that. Question number 5. The internet has transformed the way information is shared and consumed, but it has also created problems that did not exist before. What are the most serious problems associated with internet and what are the solutions, right? So you can see that when you share information, it's good, but there are also some problems, okay? What are the problems and how can you change it? What are the solutions, okay? The last practice question for you. Despite a large number of gyms, a sedentary lifestyle is gaining popularity in the contemporary world. Okay? What problems are associated with this, and then again, what are the solutions you could suggest? So list 2 problems and then talk about 2 solutions. That would be nice. All right. So I think we had a look at some examples. We had a look at 2 different ways that we could approach the essay, right? And the essay style is cause and solution. So you could come up with 3 different styles, right? You could come up with the problem, solution, cause, solution, and solution only, all right? So with that, we come to the end of the lesson, cause and solution essays.